If you've watched HBO's The Gilded Age, you've met Ward McAllister, the smooth, faintly theatrical gatekeeper who decides who's in and who's emphatically out. Played brilliantly by Nathan Lane, he seems almost too perfectly drawn to be real. But he was very real, and his fingerprints are all over the social machinery of the late 19th century New York. So let's take a look at who Ward McAllister was, his society book, and how this society system worked, and why it resonates today. Also, stick around for my further reading recommendations at the end of the video. Hey, you're watching Journeys Through History. I'm Greg, a professor who talks about history and cultural studies. If you like this kind of journey, like and subscribe to the channel. Let's start with a question I hear often. Was Ward McAllister really a Southerner? The answer is yes, he was. He was born in Savannah, Georgia in December 1827. The son of a prominent legal and political family, he trained as a lawyer. He spent time in Gold Rush, California practicing law and then married into New York money, positioning himself as the interpreter of good society for the post-Civil War metropolis, the Gilded Age. Now, by the 1870s, New York was exploding with new fortunes. Old New York Knickerbocker families guarded their status while railroad, finance, and industrial titans built palaces uptown. Ward McAllister, with a Southerner's courtliness and a networker's instincts, made himself indispensable to Caroline Astor, the Mrs. Astor, the era's reigning hostess. He made himself indispensable by codifying rules of admission and behavior in society. In 1872, he helped found the Society of the Patriarchs, a committee of well-born men who curated invitation lists for the season's most coveted patriarchs' balls. These events functioned as gatehouses. Get invited, and you were, practically speaking, inside the walls. McAllister's greatest PR coup was a number. In 1888, he quipped that there were about 400 people who truly belonged to society, a line that newspapers adored. On February 16, 1892, after years of teasing and rival lists, the New York Times printed a long roll of names that McAllister had provided and had anointed as the 400. The list hardened a myth into a media fact and made the 400 shorthand for New York's inner circle. Now, if you're thinking of Bertha Russell's social siege on the HBO's The Gilded Age, you're meant to recall Alva Vanderbilt's real-world coup, the 1883 costume ball that forced old money to acknowledge new money. Show creator Julian Fellowes adapted this into Bertha's spectacular Season 1 finale. He softened the masquerade visuals, but kept the essence of this lavish, strategic party that could pry open closed doors to society. And then came the misstep that Season 3 of the HBO show embraces. McAllister published a tell-all-ish memoir in 1890, Society as I Have Found It. What was he trying to do? He tells us plainly. In his author's note, he warns that the book is miscellaneous and makes no pretension to either scholarship or elegant diction. He's not writing history, he's recording the world he lived in. He closes by saying, he has simply discussed society as I have found it, and only such entertainments of which I have been part and parcel. In short, it's a how-to manual and a self-portrait, not a sober treatise or critique. The book is part travelogue, part etiquette and entertaining playbook, with menus, seating, budgets, even sample calling cards. Most revealing are the chapters on the patriarchs, how committees and quotas structured invitations, how a dinner table was a power grid, and how reputation and polish converted generosity into status. It's a primary source on the administration of exclusivity. But publishing inside gossip was bad politics. Caricatures in the press lampooned his vanity. Allies winced at the indiscretion. After the 1892 400 appeared in the New York Times, ridicule intensified. Within a few years, McAllister's social power had ebbed, even as the phrase he minted lives on in the HBO series. And HBO tracks this as closely portraying the book as both his momentum and his undoing. Julian Fellowes and the HBO production team weave real people, Mrs. Astor, Mamie Fish, J.P. Morgan, Booker T. Washington, Clara Barton, even Oscar Wilde, into fictional storylines. And Nathan Lane's Ward McAllister is recognizably the historical figure, a Southern-born fixer who flatters, bargains, and stage manages access for a queen bee hostess. The show telescopes timelines and personalities, of course, but the social logic it dramatizes, committee-run balls, curated guest lists, the press's obsession with rankings, is in fact accurate in both spin and practice. One element the series only hints at is the bureaucratization of status after Mrs. Astor. Even before 1892, Louise Keller's Social Register, which was launched in 1887, was turning club memberships, family lines, and addresses into a printed directory. Lasting into the 20th century, it would outlast any one hostess's court. McAllister's 400 myth dovetailed with that larger paperwork of prestige. McAllister's career lets us see the nuts and bolts of the Gilded Age's social order. It wasn't just snobbery. It was infrastructure. Committees, invitation quotas, architectural spaces, think Mrs. Astor's ballroom, menus and music, all of it formed a system that translated money into good taste, and good taste translated back into power. And it met its match in spectacle. The Vanderbilts and their peers spent so lavishly with such theatrical cunning that the old rules bent. The 400 brand turned a fluid process into a headline, but the reality underneath was perpetual negotiation. If you're thinking, this sounds a lot like blue check culture, velvet rope clubs, even today's private member spaces, well, that's the right connection. The tools change, ballrooms to platforms, but the gatekeeping logic feels familiar. Now, beneath the catchy headline, the 400 ran on repeatable processes, not just one hostess's whim. The keystone was the Society of the Patriarchs, whose committee structure standardized who could invite whom to the season's most coveted balls. Contemporary accounts describe fixed invitation quotas for each patriarch and a subscription fee. Plus, there were a limited pool of distinguished strangers. Translation: access was rationed, auditable, and crucially visible to others inside. These curated assemblies, supplemented by private house balls, created an invitation economy where being seen in the right rooms conferred a passport to the rest of the season. Lists made it durable. Even before the press printed the famous roster in 1892, the Social Register was turning visiting lists and club rolls into a standing directory. Names, addresses, ties to kin, and acceptable affiliations. Once status was codified on paper, gatekeeping outlived any single arbiter. That's why the 400 brand meshed so neatly with the Register's bureaucracy of belonging. The 400 was also a press creation. Ward McAllister's 1888 quip, "Only about 400 people are really at ease in a ballroom," gave reporters a hook. The 1892 New York Times list gave them copy for days. The oft-repeated idea that 400 matched Mrs. Astor's ballroom capacity is best treated as lore. Historians flag it as a persistent myth that hardened after the fact. None of this worked without gossip. Not the whisper, but the gossip in print. Weeklies like the publication Town Topics professionalized society tattling through the notorious Saunterings column. Divorces, flirtations, snubs, and seating charts became quasi-public data. The column's blend of innuendo and naming names both policed behavior and amplified the value of inclusion. A glowing mention could crown a debut. A barbed one could chill invitations. Circulation spikes, lawsuits, and occasional blackmail scandals show how reputations, how they were managed and monetized in Gilded Age New York. After 1900, the gossip machinery only expanded. Daily society columns scaled the same dynamics to a mass audience. Even as the old 400 faded, the mechanism stayed constant. Public talk sorted private status. So why does any of this matter now? Well, reputation is still a platform. From velvet rope clubs to follower counts and verified badges, we still launder belonging through lists, metrics, and curated rooms. The Patriarchs used invitation quotas. Today, we use admission criteria, algorithms, and DMs. The logic and the anxieties are familiar. Secondly, gossip is governance. Town Topics weaponized attention. Social media does too. What was once Saunterings is now the push notification. Visibility disciplines behavior, rewards the spectacular, and punishes the off-brand. Third, paper trails make power portable. The 400 mattered because newspapers and the social register made status transferable beyond any single ballroom. Our digital directories do the same. Fourth, myths outlive facts. The sticky but likely apocryphal ballroom capacity story proves that a good narrative can beat footnotes. That's a useful caution when we parse today's prestige stories. HBO's The Gilded Age gets the drama right. Glittering rooms, tactical dinners, social warfare, but the real secret is the paperwork and the press. Committees set the guest list, and gossip made sure everyone knew it. If you're interested in reading more about this subject, here are 3 excellent books I recommend. Information about them is available in the description. First, Greg King, A Season of Splendor, The Court of Mrs. Astor in Gilded Age, New York. This is a vivid, accessible panorama of the families, balls, and mansions that defied the era. It's a great companion to the show. Second, Sven Beckert, The Moneyed Metropolis, New York City and the Consolidation of the American Bourgeoisie, 1850 to 1896. This is a scholarly classic on how New York's economic elite organized its power, anchoring the social story in structural change. And then finally, Amanda Mackenzie Stewart's Consuelo and Alva Vanderbilt, the story of a daughter and a mother in the Gilded Age. This is a richly researched dual biography. Now, as far as the 400 is concerned, the bottom line is that Ward McAllister was indeed the charming Southerner in Northern drawing rooms. And his genius and undoing was treating society like a system he could design. Committee by committee, guest list by guest list, story by story. HBO gives us the theater. His memoir lets us see the machinery behind the curtain. Thanks for watching. Hey, you're watching Journeys Through History. I'm Greg, a professor who talks about history and cultural studies. If you like this kind of journey, like and subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments your thoughts about the Gilded Age, HBO's Gilded Age. Join us for more journeys through history. Until next time, safe journeys.